Hello, my loves. It has been a long time. Welcome to the Heart of the Soul podcast. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild women walking this earth, wild women walking this earth, as we share through the ancient ritual of storytelling and learn from one another and connect about that which unites us all. Today is Saturday, September 20th, and our moon is moving towards a new moon tomorrow with an eclipse. It's been quite the energy this spring and summer. This is going to be a solo podcast episode where I catch you up a little bit about what's been going on in my world, why I took a pause away from podcasting. I do have some notes here, just some kind of bullet points that I want to, of things I would like to touch on. And I will be doing my best to riff off of that. And I think it should be a fun episode. I've had some people asking for a solo one, so I hope that you all enjoy this. As always, I would love to hear if you have any topic suggestions or guests that you would like to have me on. I'm excited for this next season and to be getting going again on this podcast. To start this episode, I thought I would pull a card from this beautiful deck by Autumn Sky. So I've just been shuffling them here in my hands as we begin here. And let's see. I think I'm just going to pull one card here. I don't think I've ever pulled this card before. I love that. I love when that happens. So the card that I pulled is this one right here. Let's see if I can get it without the reflections. Oh, yes. Wow. Okay, so this is from Autumn Sky. It's called True North. Calm your mind and listen to your body. Follow the compass of your heart. Trust in a benevolent universe and let your spirit navigate. Authenticity cultivates clarity and ease. Wow, this feels so in alignment with you. And for those of you that I've been in contact with, I feel like this is likely also in alignment with you. So there's this beautiful thing that happens with our relationships in the world and that I've noticed, and that is that we often connect with and are drawn to other humans that are either already doing things that we want to do or that they're starting to, and that people we can look upon to see the path, these way showers, right? And we're showing to one another. And I love the message here of following the inner compass of our hearts, because this is something that I learned to do in my 30s and has been a deep practice of mine to calm my mind, to settle into my body and follow my heart, my soul's calling, to stop looking outside for answers and to turn within. So let's see where this goes here today. Like I said, I have some notes, and then I'm also going to be sort of riffing off, or I'm going to be riffing off the notes. I don't have everything like written out fully or anything like that. I just have this Google Doc that over these last few months, after I decided to take a break from podcasting, that I wanted to share about some things. I'm not sure if I've spoken on the podcast about this yet, but at the end of 2024 in December, My father-in-law had a sudden heart attack right here, actually, in this living room that I'm now situated in. And he, well, essentially died in this living room. And then they did get a heartbeat back and they helicoptered him from the field to a hospital. And he had surgery and his body continued to live for a time. And then a few days later, he died. And this has been a huge shift in all of our lives. For my husband and his mom and his brother, most, right? And then also for all of us. And it was a sweet and tender experience to be in the hospital. He coded another time while we were in the hospital, and he was in the ICU, and most ICUs have a policy that people have to be 15 or older in order to visit someone in the ICU. Having worked within the medical system before and understanding that policies are not laws and that they often allow things that are written in their policy as things that are not allowed, like they make exceptions all the time. So anyway, I spoke to the charge nurse and asked that my children be allowed to see their grandfather in the ICU. And they did let my children, me and my husband, our children, to see their grandpa and to be with him. I remember my son wanted to write a message on his hand, and he wrote like "I love you" on his Scotty's hand. And then my daughter wanted to do the same, but she didn't know all of her letters or how to spell. So she asked me to do like a dot to dot on his hand, and she did that. And as she was finishing, she said to me, I feel Scotty, or I felt Scotty tell me that he loves me. And I said, oh, yes. Yes, like we can still hear one another. We can understand one another, even when there's no spoken words, right? So this was a big shift, and I did continue my moon soul messages during this time and continued them until, I don't know, maybe like a month-ish ago. I actually haven't looked back on my calendar, but as summer was coming and I was doing so many different things, it just felt like I needed a pause. I needed a break. We just had so much going on. But let me just go back a little bit, because I've glanced at my notes here. And I wanted to share that on my father-in-law's birthday, which was in February, we were all getting together as a family to celebrate his life and remember him. And it was on that day that Emily Grace Nixon of the Soul Evolution podcast uploaded my daughter Charlotte's birth video, or one little, a minute and a half video. And this is a video that has been shared before on the internet and on Instagram through Free Birth Society. And on this day, for whatever reason, when she posted it, and it went viral and had over 2 million views by the end of the day, before Instagram then, of course, took it down. But it felt like this, like such a sweet, synchronistic gift from Scotty. Like it was on his birthday that then Charlotte's birth video would go viral. And of course, Emily didn't know that it was my father-in-law's birthday on that day. She was just following her flow with her podcast and posting, and she shared it and it happened to go viral. I remember when it was getting so much attention, she and I both getting lots of new followers and comments and all these things. And And some of the comments, some of the people following us, starting to follow us, were like, creepy followers. Of course, there were lots of genuine people who were interested in what she and I are doing as well. I remember her saying, "Are you okay with this? Like, do you want me to take it down?" And it's like, no, like it's out in the world already. It's out in other places. And I believe birth is so important in this world. And especially right now, like the podcast, The Great Birth Rebellion, right? Like we're going through this transformation in the birth world. Women are waking up and remembering that we, since the beginning of time, have known how to birth our babies, that we don't need a hospital to tell us how to birth our babies. That is something that we innately are capable of doing. And I think it's so important. I feel so deeply that it's so important that more people are able to witness birth in its physiological, natural unfolding. And that is what Charlot's birth was, right? When I had this family unassisted birth where I birthed her on our living room floor. So what else? For me, when I decided to take a break from the podcast, I just realized that I was starting to feel the burden. I started to feel the burden of recording my moon soul messages, which I never had before. I mean, yes, sometimes it was like a task or something that I was whatever, but I realized that I needed a break, that I was holding a lot. This spring, so much has happened. There's been so much grief and death in my realm and in my slightly wider realm of friends and chosen family. And as a birth worker and as a death worker, I realized that I was holding a lot. And so it meant that during those quiet moments when those quiet moments in my life, I have two small children, so there aren't very many, right? Like super busy times, always busy making meals, playing, getting out on adventures, reading, crafting, projects, like that. When I was carving out those quiet times for myself, I had work things to do. I had podcasting to do. I had posting to do. I needed to like upload videos. And I realized that actually what I needed right now was to take some things off my plate, was to recognize that I had a lower capacity to do all these things and that I wanted a season of break. I wanted to create an opportunity for myself to have more time in contemplation with my own knowing, in quiet with universe, with ancestors, to have quiet, sacred time, and not to feel like every time I had a break, I had to do something. I wanted to step out of the doing and step into more being this summer and savoring the energy of summer, to press pause. And really, I also had this desire and knowing that I wanted to have the space to get more clear on what do I want to share in the world? What do I want to share in this platform? How do I want my business to look and feel and sound? And so I took this beautiful pause, and I'd have to look back now. I didn't look back. I'm not sure exactly how long this pause was. I did record an episode of the podcast, but I haven't published it yet. I'm actually going to be publishing this one before that one, which is unusual for me. I normally publish in the order that I record. But I found myself this spring with things happening that I was like filming content and then not posting it. And I just knew that I had to pause. So also this spring, one of my dearest friends had her baby die, her baby that she was about to birth. And then she had to birth this baby and experience the experience of birthing death, right? Like birthing death is not easy, and it takes one into the depths of grief, initiates one into this realm of solidifying how little control we have in this life. And this also happened at the same time as we were planning to have my father-in-law's celebration of life, preparing for that. Also, we're here now where in this home where my husband lived as a child and where my in-laws lived for 30 plus years now. And we were about a half an hour away on a mountain, and it was the middle of winter. So she was coming there. We were coming here. We were having to help out with all sorts of stuff and just make many trips here to assist her with things. And it also became clear that she was not able to take care of all this space on her own. And we had made a decision that this July we would move in with her. And so we did. So we're here now in this home on this land. There's 20 acres here, which is beautiful. And this is also the land where my husband and I got married out on the field. We made a beautiful labyrinth and had our guests all in a circle around us. And we got married in the center of the labyrinth. There are so many beautiful memories here. And it's been an honor and a journey to enter this multi-generational living that we're in right now. And it's something that both my husband and I have always known that we were open to and something that we wanted to do. We've always known that we want to care ourselves for our loved ones as they grow older, if that is something that they also want from us. And as it turned out, after we moved in here, my mother-in-law was having a hard time with her knees, and the doc told her to basically stay off of her knee for 6 weeks. So it was actually so divine, the timing that we were here. And I've also felt grief and love come through here. You know, all my babies have been here. This is the home where I met my in-laws, whom I adore. This up here is a self-portrait that my mother-in-law did of herself in the 70s, 73. She's an incredible artist. This is her, well, it has feathers in it, but she crafted this wood dragon. We're in the year of the wood snake, and she made this wood dragon and then put these different there's these feathers and such in it. She is this incredible artist, and I just love being here in her home and in the energy. And my daughter Charlotte is a kindred soul and loves to craft and create art, so it's just been so sweet to see them together crafting. And I've also been feeling the energy of my baby Hartley. And my labor actually started here in this home in my mother-in-law's room. We were here the day that I went into labor with her, gave birth to her 2 days later. Yeah. And also, as this day, Hartley's birthday and death day were approaching, which happened at the very end of August, I could feel the weight of this year marker be big for me. So it was 10 years. So 10 years ago, this August, I gave birth to her at home and held her as she took her few breaths before she died. If you want to hear her whole birth story, you can look back. I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes here. I've told it by myself and also with my husband, Owen. And the first year was definitely the hardest after she was born and died. That first year of grief, it's a big year. It's a big year for most people when anyone dies. Like this first year of my father-in-law being dead is also a big year. And grief can be, like one of my friends says, grief is a sneaky little bitch sometimes. She sneaks up on you when you're not expecting it. And I also say that grief like comes in waves like the ocean. You know, you think it's settled down, and then a big wave comes when you're not even thinking about it, and something hits you and you just feel it all over again. And so over these last 10 years, I've done, different things to celebrate her and remember her, especially on her birth and death day. The first year after she was born, that is when we decided to do like a celebration of life with friends and family at the lake where I lived when I was just a wee thing. And that was beautiful and felt like good timing. I knew right after she died that I couldn't create that kind of event or didn't want to have that sort of event or gathering right away after she had died. I just needed to be in my grief dungeon, really. And over these years, there have been some years where I, celebrate more and like make a cake and do sorts of things. And then other times where I just like think of her and do something on my own. And sometimes I involve the family. Sometimes I just want it to be just me. And as this 10-year approached, I could feel that the energy was a bit stronger, that 10 years is just, it's a big number. And I wanted to be at home with my family. I didn't want to go out and do anything. I did choose to make a cake for her, and that felt nice. And so we did, sing her happy birthday and ate cake. And I really just took a lot of quiet time and could feel her spirit and received messages from her and follow the thread of grief and let grief have its way with me in the way that felt right that day and in the days approaching. So I also want to talk about another death. The death of my little fur doggy Gizmo. So I first got him after Bjorn died. So Bjorn was my first love, and I was 25 and he was 26 when he died. And that following year, I got this little dog, this little mutt. And he just became this like beautiful companion for me. And I took him everywhere, on the ferry, rock climbing, hiking, like backpacking. And he really helped to soothe my soul and show me love when I was not ready to love another man or take that risk in that way. And he lived for so long, right? Like 25, so 35, 40. Yeah. So I got him, I think I was 25 when I got him. And now I'm 42, about to be 43. So he lived like 15 years. this little guy. And for most of it, he was really happy, healthy. Like people thought he was a puppy, even when he was like 15 years old, they still thought he was a puppy. And I lost track of exactly how old he was. I think he was closer to 20 when he died. And even looking back at Charlotte's birth video, he's like all walking along and he's just fine. But this spring, after Scotty died, he started showing signs that death was coming nearer. And he's never had any like medical problems other than his poor little teeth. He didn't have very many teeth at this time. And I could feel and see that he was moving closer to death. And, you know, honestly, I'd been preparing for it for a long time. So in some ways, I had made peace with knowing that his death was coming soon. And I had always hoped that I wouldn't feel the need, like that he wouldn't be in any sort of discomfort to the point where I felt like I needed to euthanize him or kill him or have the veterinary staff kill him. And I feel so grateful that you know, that is how this unfolded. He just became more and more weak. And just in the last week of his life, he stopped eating so much. Before that, he was just eating fine. And at this point, he couldn't really see or hear very well. So mostly he would just eat and sleep and, you know, walk around. And so when he stopped eating, I knew that this was, well, there was like one time when he didn't eat, like maybe a couple weeks before he died. And then the few days approaching his death, he just stopped eating or would only eat a little bit, even when we gave him really yummy food. And then in the last 3 days of his life, he started having a hard time walking. And so I held him a lot more in this season. He got lots and lots of sink baths because he was a tiny dog. And, you know, he would pee and poop on himself. And so I would clean him up and wrap him up and would hold him while I did things. And then, you know, really in those last couple of days, it happened pretty quickly. And my kids were also snuggling him more. And I was recognizing the signs of death that are for not just dogs, but also humans. You know, I worked as a registered nurse in palliative care, and many people just don't even know what the regular signs, what the normal signs of impending death are, especially like natural death of old age, like this was. But not eating, not drinking, not being as interactive, like these are all signs. And, you know, in the end, I remember I could see his little mouth was getting dry. And so I, you know, would hold him and I would like spoon feed him a little bit of water just to like moisten his mouth, and could see the fluids getting thicker in his throat, which is also very normal. And one day in May was when I was holding him and held him, and I could feel like it was probably going to happen this night. And so I stayed up late. And honestly, it wasn't even that late. It was, I think, in the 10 o'clock hour that as I held him, he took his final breath. And then there was no more. And his body was still. And I held him for a while longer. And actually, the moment that he took his last breath, I received an important text message from a mama who was grieving. And it felt so like, what? Like this cosmic. It's amazing how these things line up. And just held him for a while. And then, but when I was ready to go to bed, I tucked him in with his favorite blanket on his little bed and wanted him to, you know, wanted the way that he looked to be okay for my children. They knew that his death was coming, and I did, they saw him in the morning and they gave him kisses and pet him and saw that he was no longer alive, that his body no longer had his soul within it. And the next day we brought his body here and buried him out in the field under a little tree, and my children participated in this, and they helped dig the hole, they helped put the dirt on top of him, and they helped decorate. And with flowers, we picked flowers and put them on top of his grave and on top of his body before we put him in there, before we put the dirt on top. So we created simple ritual and ceremony, and I answered any questions that they had, and we just sang and loved him and remembered him and honored the incredible life that he had lived. So all this to say was that this spring was just so full of grief that I needed to have the spaciousness to flow with and move and grieve in the ways that I need and like to grieve, and also hold space and honor for my husband's grieving, for my mother-in-law's grieving, for our children to grieve their grandfather, to grieve this dog that has been a part of our life since before they were born. And so rather than continue to shit on myself, I decided to take this break and to lean in to the summer energy, to take the pause and to nurture myself in the different ways that I wanted to, which was sometimes just to be and sometimes to do things. I really find that dance and movement are really important ways for me that I find, there's things that we can't express with words that movement gives us this opportunity to express and let go and flow with our grief in a way that talk therapy and talking things out, just, yes, it's important and useful and all of that. And sometimes there are things that are unspeakable, and movement and creating ceremony and ritual and art projects help to move the grief when it's stuck, when it feels stuck. Okay, shift. So I hope that this podcast is called The Heart of the Soul, right? And the name of the podcast came to me 5+ years ago now, when I was in the bath and knew that I was being called to start this podcast, knew that I was being called to speak out and publish and share it with the world, even though I was terrified. Sorry, the flies are getting me right now. Even though I was terrified and scared to do so. And the heart of the soul, that came to me, and I knew it was my podcast name. And then in this move, this July, and so because of those letters, I will often save files, podcast recordings, different things as HOTS, Heart of the Soul. I just, HOTS, HOTS, Heart of the Soul, Heart of the HOTS. And when I was moving this fall, I found this from 3rd grade. So it says HOTS. That's exactly what I put on all sorts of things, podcast related, Heart of the Soul, HOTS. And this is my birth name, Ashley Mayfield. And then I changed it to Amana in my early 30s. And if you didn't know that about me, so that's why it says by Ashley. So here I am in third grade, and I have looked all through this book. So there's stories, and of course, stories. My podcast is a storytelling podcast, and here this is HOTS Stories by me. And when I look through here, it doesn't say anything about what HOTS stands for. Nothing. Like this whole book that I've looked through of the stories that I tell, nothing says anything about HOTS and what that means. And so I'm just like, what is this? Like I wrote this. I have no idea what the HOTS means, and yet it totally aligns with where I am right now at 42, part of the Soul podcast, Stories by me. So anyway, I just had to share this. And I also loved in here, I say that when I grow up, I want to be a teacher and a mother. And here I am, a mother and a teacher. And I love that I had mother in here, because that's a really important role in this world. It's the most important job anyone could ever have. So you may or may not know about this. I'm just going to preface it by just giving a little backstory in that I have studied with Kimberly and Johnson for 5 years now. I did many, many online courses with her, and also have learned from her in person more than once, and am planning to be with her and learn from her again at Ghost Ranch. If you don't know who she is, you should totally look her up. She's written a few books, one, The Fourth Trimester, which talks about how important it is those first 3 months after we give birth and how we can prepare for them. And Call of the Wild. I have copies of both of them. I didn't bring them up here. Call of the Wild, which if you've heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score, it's similar to that, but focused on the female nervous system. And this is so important and such a weirdly taboo topic that women's bodies, women's nervous systems are different than men's. So if you've only heard about the nervous system and fight, flight, fawn, and freeze from a male perspective, I highly encourage you to go check out The Call of the Wild, or Forging the Feminine Path is a spoken series that from Sounds True that's available on Audible, which is more of like a storytelling way that she shares very similar information to Call of the Wild. And so in some of the studies that I've done with Kimberly, she talks about stories and how we can listen to the way a person shares a story. And if they're sharing specifically like birth stories, because she is in the birth realm, she also attended births as a doula for some time. And I, if you don't know me already, have also attended births for 15 years now and had my own babies at home. But she speaks to the point that if you're listening to someone's story and they're regurgitating it and sticking to this like timeline and telling like fact after fact after fact, that they haven't fully integrated their birth experience, that they haven't mined their birth for the gems that are there with every single experience of birth that we have. She speaks about how when our nervous system state changes, our stories change. That story follows state. So I could also reflect, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, that when I share like Hartley's birth story, for instance, the way that I shared it with people, how I told the story when it had just been 1 year since she was born is so different from like how I most recently told it on the Sacred Reclamation podcast with Sydni Sands. And the telling of it changes across time because our state changes and story follows state, and state has to do with our nervous system and where we're at. And it's also why I believe it's so important to do trauma birth debriefs, or even if you don't feel like your birth was traumatic, but to have a debrief of your birth and have the opportunity to tell your story to someone like me or Diana Forcell Tayan. There's lots of beautiful women doing birth story medicine is what I might call this, whether it's about birth trauma or not. There are gems to be found in your birth story, and it's important to tell your story to someone who is capable and practiced at receiving your story and helping you to integrate and heal from anything that needs healing. And speaking of birth, let's segue into my lineage of birth. And I've shared a little bit about this before, but I just wanted to, again, share my lineage and my grandma Elsie. So this is my great-grandmother. Her birth name was Elsa, and then they changed it to Elsie later. And she gave birth to my grandmother Elsie, and the next day she died. And that's all I really know, is that on one day she gave birth, and it was on the next day that she died. And my mom and family don't have any other information about why she died, but she did. So this is my grandma Elsie here with her dad, who was in the military. And this, of course, was at a time when single men didn't raise babies by themselves. So they sent my grandma Elsie, oh, wrong spot. They sent my grandma Elsie to live with my great grandma's sister and her husband as their daughter. They'd had 2 sons, and then they had Elsie, who they raised as their own after her mother died. So this is my grandma, and she gave birth to Elsie. So this is Elsie. This is her dressed up as a bride. This is her young. This is her with her dad. And I can imagine that Elsie, my grandma Elsie, probably, I don't know this because I did ask her stories about birth, her experiences of her birthing her children. But at the time, when I was in my 20s and asking her these questions, I wasn't thinking clearly about how she could potentially hold fear of death, of like birthing her babies and dying, because her mother died right after she gave birth to her. But as the story goes, my grandmother gave birth to my uncle. He's this one here that's my grandpa Dick. That's my uncle, my mother's older brother. And this is my grandma Elsie holding my mother. And what actually happened was that she birthed her first child, her son, unintentionally, accidentally, in the car on a road trip. They were on a baby moon type road trip before the birth was supposed to occur. And he came early and swiftly and was not born in the hospital and was tiny. She talks about putting him in the oven and funny things like that. But he lived and he stayed alive, and she birthed him unassisted on her own. And so when she was pregnant with my mother, they moved closer to the hospital at the end of her pregnancy to stay with family that lived closer to the hospital. than they did so that they would hopefully get to the hospital before she birthed my mother. She didn't know it was my mom, of course. Yet, as this story goes, she woke up in the night in labor and she birthed my mother on these wooden stairs inside this house as my grandpa was upstairs putting his pants on. So I have this embodied, felt sense experience of and history within my own family of my grandma Elsie birthing unassisted these children. She went on to have two more boys that she birthed in hospital, but I just love that birth happens, right? Whether you get to the hospital or not, birth happens. I feel like there's more and more videos of women birthing in cars, and I understand how that can be hard for the women, but I also sort of think it's babies are sometimes choosing it. That babies are choosing to be born before they get to the hospital because of all the harm that happens to mothers and babies within the hospital. Birth isn't that complicated most of the time. We have made it complicated. We've been told that we can't conceive, grow, or birth our babies on our own during this time, right? Like, what the hell? Like, why these days 98% of women in the United States are birthing their babies in hospitals? We have complicated these basic human functions as medical events. Birth doesn't have to be a medical event. You don't need to be in the hospital to birth a baby. Our ancestors, like, hospitals just came about a few hundred years ago. Before that, we all were birthing our babies outside of the hospital. And we have just moved away from the basic knowledge of birth. If you ask like the average Joe on the side of the road or out at a restaurant, like, most people don't know that much about birth. And this is something that I want to change. I've realized that this is one of those lanes that I want to be a part of, sharing in my own ways and language about birth, the simplicity of birth, I feel like birth education should be human education. All humans should understand basic things about birth, death, and female fertility. Females especially, we all need to know and understand our fertility, our cycle, the rhythms of our body. And that's a basic body literacy that we don't have right now. I didn't understand my cycle until I was, in my 20s or 30s or something. It's so silly. I remember meeting a woman in her 40s the other day, and she didn't know that there was like a fertile period and a not fertile period, and what her cervical fluid meant, and what it meant if her blood wasn't bright red at the beginning, that if her blood started as like a dark, slow flow, that was her body speaking to her. I know women who were trying to get pregnant, and yet they weren't actually having intercourse during their fertile time. And so it's not going to happen. But if you don't understand or know when your fertile time is, then how would you be open to conception and allow the possibility? So I feel like this is jumping around. I am jumping around, but I hope that you guys go okay with it. I hope that you like this. Tell me if you do. Tell me if you don't. You won't hurt my feelings. One thing that I've been wanting to share that I haven't shared yet are a few home birth hacks. If you are planning a home birth, here are a few things that I haven't heard other people talk about that could be super helpful at home, whether you're birthing with a midwife or without one. Birth, it can be messy. Sometimes it's not, but often, most of the time, it's at least a bit messy, right? And I've known people to put down, like plastic tarps on their ground to protect carpet or things like that. And I would like to invite the possibility of using a painting tarp that's like cloth. You can get it for about the same amount of money, and you can also put a blanket or something on top of it. It's not all crinkly. So I like to use that instead of plastic or Chuck's pads. I just wanted to cover my whole area of the floor in the room where there was carpet where I thought I might be birthing. Tip number 2, a yoga stool, a yoga inversion stool. Have you ever seen one of these? I have one out on the porch. If you haven't, look one up. I have people asking me about steaming stools and birthing stools. Well, a yoga stool you can use for both. You can use it for your inversions. You can also use it to birth on. The way that it's cut out, you can use it as a birthing stool, and you can also use it postpartum when you're doing your vaginal steaming. So that's 2. 3, you don't need a big bowl for your placenta, okay? Your placenta is not, you don't need a like massive bowl for your placenta. A pie dish is probably perfect. That's what I used, because I also didn't want to have to like be too far up off the ground. Like some bowls are pretty, high up off the ground, and you might have to squat or something in a way that might not feel comfortable right after you pushed a baby out. So I would like to invite you the possibility of using a deep pie dish to birth your placenta. And then later you can bake pies in there and tell your child, like, this was where your placenta first landed. And 4, double sheets on your bed. So whether or not you anticipate that you're going to birth on your bed, what I used to do as a birth assistant to midwives and what I did when I birthed my own babies was this could be a job for your husband or support person. It's always good to write a little list of things that you want them to do when you go into labor, when you're still in that easy time, likely. Not all labors start out easy, but when your labor is likely starting out slower, that it could be a time that they can get a few things done off your list, like clean the toilet in case you're puking or birthing into it, vacuuming, and doing these sheets on the bed. So what you do, say you start with a mattress, right? And put whatever sort of normal mattress protector you would have on there, and then your clean sheet. And then over top of that clean fitted sheet, you put a plastic sheet or a plastic cover. They make these plastic fitted sheets that we use when we know we might be birthing on the bed, because there can often be a lot of fluid and you don't want all that fluid in your mattress. So then a plastic sheet and then another fitted sheet. And this is great because then, let's say hours later, whatever, you give birth on that bed, or maybe you don't give birth on the bed. Either way, you give birth on the bed, super messy. So then you can easily just have your support team pull off that top layer, that top fitted sheet with that plastic layer. And then underneath, you already have a clean sheet on the bed with whatever protection you prefer under that. And they're not having to like remake the bed. It's already made. So if you didn't know about this, try it out. So I'm looking at my notes again here. Yes. So some of these aren't really going to flow that well together, but I'm just going to keep moving forward. I wrote, sometimes we focus too much on what we are becoming, that we forget to live and be within and enjoy the now moments. I have absolutely been guilty of this, where I'm so focused on where I'm trying to get to that I lose sight of what's happening right now in today. So if you have been really focused on the future and what you're moving towards, I believe that, of course, it's good to have goals and move towards things. And that's what I do as well. But don't forget these precious now moments. I've really been feeling it with my children. My children are 5 and 8 now, and they're not tiny anymore. And I'm tall, my husband's tall, so they're also like tall 5 and 8-year-olds. They're big. And sometimes I would get so focused on recording certain content or things, and then my child would interrupt me, and I would find myself getting angry rather than leaning into being with them and savoring the beautiful moments that we have right now together, that we have the opportunity for each day. So here's something that I know upsets some people, but I believe that babies are built and birthed by their one true mother. And I feel this more and more, like the more and more that I'm learning that they are uncovering the way that each baby that we hold within our womb leaves fetal cells within our bloodstream for our life. And that those fetal cells also are absorbed in some ways and impact every single other baby that is grown and lived within our womb. So what do I mean by this? I believe that babies are built and birthed by their one true mother, by their biological mother. So I don't believe that surrogacy is kind or right for babies. If that baby had a choice, they would not be grown inside a woman that was not going to then caretake them, because that baby doesn't know that they pulled eggs from you and sperm from someone else and put them together, and that then you put this egg that you view as yours and your baby into another woman. That baby doesn't know that. A baby doesn't know that they've been inserted into somebody else's womb, and that, to that baby, that woman that they're growing within, that woman's body, that woman, what that woman's eating, what's in her blood, what's in her bones, that is what is building your baby. That baby is being built by that woman. The flesh and bones are coming from that woman. Yes, maybe the biology started in a petri dish, which also makes me really sad. The fact that they take sperms and insert it, like someone getting paid minimum wage in a lab is taking a sperm and inserting it into eggs, right? That drives me nutty. But then when people go as far as to believe that and manipulate these women who are doing this because they need money, they're not doing it. Yes, there are those few stories where people are not doing it for money, but there's places all over the world where people are being exploited, being forced to be human incubators. And really, they are the baby's true mother. When that baby grows inside of the woman, she hears the sounds of that woman. She knows that woman's voice, that woman's energy. Their physical form is literally built from that woman. And for all intents and purposes, to that baby, that woman is their mother. That is the scent, the sound, the energy that they crave, desire, need after they are born. When that woman births that baby has no idea who this other person is. And removing babies from their true mother, from the woman that grew them, removing them and putting them with these other people, whether this is adoption or surrogacy now in this instance, that create, and like my grandmother, she had this primal wound. They call it the primal wound, to be separated from the true mother. I understand that there are sometimes when adoption is needed. I don't believe that surrogacy is ever needed, or that it's ever right for the baby. Yes, some people might never be able to conceive, and so they might never be able to have their own biological baby. But that's not the baby's fault. That's not something that is guaranteed to every human being or every woman. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean you get to have a baby. Think of that baby. Intentionally starting babies off with this primal wound, ripping them from the one true mother, from the sounds and the smells that they know, just breaks my heart. If you want to learn more about this, I don't think I want to go further down this, but if you want to go down this rabbit hole, check out Exploitation. It's a documentary on Netflix. That same woman has done some other, I can't think of the names right now, but I will try to link them in the show notes. Educate yourself about surrogacy and about the dangers and the harms to the women and to their babies. Women are not meant to grow babies and then not mother them. There's also what happens is these women get in these situations where they birth this baby, and to them, like, this is their baby, right? Because physiologically it is their baby. And then they're forced to and have agreed to give that baby, to hand that baby over to someone else. When I was a child, I was enchanted by babies, women in birth. We all come from a lineage of women who knew how to birth their babies at home. If you are thinking that home birth is something that you are curious about and you might want to do, what we need to do is move closer to that. Get some experience. Talk to other women that have done it before. Start listening to stories and watch videos and explore the possibilities for your birth, for you and your baby. You need to move towards those things. Get clear on your ideas, visions, and actions and choices that you want, that you need to take in order to have the birth that you are dreaming of. What do you want your birth to look like? What do you want it to sound like? How do you want it to feel? Who do you feel most safe with, that you would want present when you're in your most vulnerable, open time, doing the most magnificent thing that women ever do? What things, what ways are you comforted when you're in pain and with emotional or physical discomfort? Who can comfort you in those times? Who helps you to feel safe and secure and ease your pain? These are questions you need to ask when you're moving towards your birth. I feel like I want to be a part of this huge shift of moving women, of moving humanity away from medicalized birth and medicalized death into humanizing birth, humane death. What does that even mean? What will that look like? To me, this means less medical providers, less people taking authority, taking power over the women, over the dying person, and asking them, how can I be in service to you in this process? Right? Like, almost all deaths, 90% of deaths in the US, 98% of births are happening within a medical facility here in the US. And for death, it's the same. Almost all births and deaths are medicalized, are drugged, right? Like, oh my gosh, this makes me think. I didn't write this down as a note, but I have been reflecting on, you may or may not know, but there's a big problem with fentanyl right now, right? Like adults, it's like the cheap drug on the streets that people can get and die from so easily, right? Did you know that that is also the same drug that they are drugging babies with when they're in their mother's womb, when their mother is about to give birth? Fentanyl is what goes in that epidural, and we wonder why we have a freaking fentanyl drug problem. That's because we are drugging up the next generation. We are drugging up these babies when they're still in their mother's womb. Fentanyl to babies. No wonder they're having a hard time after they're born. No wonder they're having a hard time breathing and the mom's sleepy and the baby's sleepy, because they received fentanyl inside their mom. They had no choice. And then they're born. And then, of course, they're going to have, like, who's surprised that they have an affinity to fentanyl if they received it before they were even fully of this earth? Tell me this isn't potentially the root of the fentanyl crisis we have going on right now in the United States. Tell me what you think. I want to hear. All right, I feel like I want to wrap towards a close here. But I'm going to read what I wrote here. The medical industry has monetized birth and death. Our society has become afraid of the unfamiliar with these two physiological processes that we are no longer familiar with. These are ancient, instinctual processes, just as instinctual as pooping. Nobody has to tell a baby how to poop. They just poop. And all of the businesses that profit from us not claiming our birth experiences, do you know what the medical system says about women and babies? That if they can get them for birth, they have them for life, right? If they can get women to come into the hospital and birth their babies, then they have those babies and those women for life, that they're going to be paying into the medical system, or the insurance companies are. Because that postpartum mom is going to most likely go to that checkup that she was scheduled for her baby and for herself weeks after she's given birth, and then the month, and then they're going to get their shots, and they already received shots inside the hospital, the jabs or whatever we have to say it, that so it doesn't like get us taken off the internet. Now we can't even talk about immunizations. And then the mom believes, women are believing every day, all the time, I can't nurse my baby. I don't know how to do this. But you do. You do. And the medical system is not the people that are going to help you to birth your baby or feed your baby most of the time. I also think it's unfathomable. The US, once you learn some of these like details about the US and what we allow and don't allow, it's wild. The fact that if you want to jump back to surrogacy, like there's all sorts of regulations that other countries have that the US does not. There is also the factor that the World Health Organization says that women should not be advertised for formula. And yet women who aren't even pregnant are sometimes receiving formula in the mail. They have formula in the hospitals and they're giving it to infants. They're giving it to mothers. They're saying, oh, just, top them up with formula. But what is this doing to the baby's guts and their long-term health? It's fucking them up. Okay, we have to stop messing with our babies from birth. And the hospital birth separates us from our babies as quickly as possible. They don't even let the placenta stop pulsing, the umbilical cord stop pulsing before they're cutting babies from the moms and taking them somewhere else, which is a hospital policy, but it's not law. It's not best for the baby. The fact that it takes 15 years for studies showing what is better for humans to then go into practice in the hospital is absurd. We have lost basic knowledge about our own bodies and have been taught that other people know them better. So, what do I want to focus on in these coming months? I want to talk more about how similar sex, birth, and death are. Okay, these are things coming up for me: sex, birth, and death. Like these intimate times, like sex. I mean, they've even have brainwashed so many of us to believe that we need medical intervention to conceive our children. And I just don't believe that. I believe we need to know more about our bodies, maybe to understand fertility. But that's something that we can learn any number of ways. And we don't need the medical system to. Like, I feel like the next jump is going to be them saying that couples need to come in and they're going to like watch them have sex to make sure that they're doing it right. Because this is, I mean, like, how absurd does that sound, right? And yet that is what's happening with women in birth. They tell women that they need to be in the hospital because it's a safe place and they can make sure that they're doing it right. So I'm just going to let that go. Just going to let that go for now. Let me know, how are you feeling about sex, birth, and death and how they're intertwined and all of that. I also am looking forward to talking about the voice of the baby. Like, who's going to speak for these babies? Who is speaking for these babies that are in the wombs of surrogate mothers? What about the experience of the baby? They don't have a choice in this. And if you've never listened to Clarissa Piccoli Estes, she's incredible. I love her so much. She's this incredible author. She has a PhD. And she wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves is maybe her most famous book, which I have and have read. It's funny, I had it for a number of years and like started it and like never got fully into it. And then maybe a decade or so ago, I read the whole thing and went on this whole journey with her different books and stories. She has like, there's this one like The Owl Mother or something, The Dark Mother. Excellent. And also she has this spoken series. So it's a spoken series. So none of them is, these stories are not written down, but it's an archetypal series. There's the joyous body, there's the dangerous old crone, there's something wild. I don't know. I don't remember how many. I've listened to them all, but I just recently re-listened to the joyous body, and Clarissa Piccoli Estes in there, she talks about our body as our consort, like as this, precious physical form that has been with us our whole life. Your body, like, just take a moment and let that sink in. Like, this body has been with you your whole life since you were inside your mother's womb. It first grew inside your mother's womb. And it has stayed with you year after year, day after day. This body. Thank you, body. Thank you. And I just love this different perspective of our bodies. And she speaks about so many incredible things in this spoken series, The Joyous Body. And she also gives a beautiful perspective to menopause, which I've heard some people like Jane Hardwicke Collins and other people starting to speak a little bit more about menopause with a different story, sharing a different story and different possibilities than it being this like horrible, awful thing that we have to live through and that we become these horrible people when we go through menopause. I do understand that like divorce rates go up in menopause and things like that, and our hormones change and all these things. But she says, menopause. If you peer between the worlds and you ask, what if in addition and instead of menopause? What if you think of it as an addition? Like, what if it's an open? What if it opens a new door? What if menopause opens a new door for us? What if it's not about like taking things away or things like that? What if menopause is a mystical grand entry into a new world with blood red verve and another circulatory system altogether? So this is something that I hadn't considered before, but it makes complete sense. So when we're born, we have one circulatory system. As young girls, we don't release our blood. It's not until we begin our bleeding, our moon time, that then our circulatory system begins releasing blood through our vaginal canal and out of our vulva, right? So it changes. And so during these fertile years, we have this bleeding that happens, the blood changes the route, the river is being rerouted, and blood red vital energy is what we release each month. And it's amazing what we're able to release in our menstrual blood. And when we're pregnant, that blood stays within us and is rerouted with the placenta, and the baby's blood circulatory system. And then when we go through menopause is when we stop. So we stop releasing this vital red blood energy and we hold that now. And so she was speaking to it as in, we have this like extra new energy. We're no longer releasing this vital energy life force each month, but we have that. We get to hold on to that now, and how that changes our whole persona, our hormones, our person, and our circulatory system. So as I am here in my 40s, moving towards 43 this November, I don't feel like I'm in perimenopause now, but I know that that is where I'm heading towards, that the river, the blood flow will be rerouted in the future. And so I'm starting to collect and learn more about this next rite of passage that I will move through with menopause in the coming years. So I want to let you know that the next podcast episode will be with a woman named Rose. She's the wild birth keeper on Instagram, and she shared with me, I have loved connecting and following her. And I asked her if she would be on my podcast, and she said yes. And when I was first speaking to her, she was still pregnant with her last little babe, who is now in arms and a few months old now. And so I'll be releasing that on the full moon. And I would just go give her a follow. And it's a beautiful series of birth stories that she shares, and her own lineage of birth as well. So I hope that you take a listen. I'm also going to be recording with Yvonne of Your Blissful Birth, I think in the upcoming weeks. So that one will be coming later. And I look forward to sharing that story with you as well. I'm excited about other women that I'm going to be reaching out to and have on my podcast as we move into 2026. I cannot believe that this 2025 is almost over, that we're in the 9th month of 2025, and it's almost the autumn equinox. It'll be the autumn equinox in just a couple of days. And the anniversary of me and my husband, we married 11 years ago near the autumn equinox. And I am continuing to find my clarity of what I want to share in the world and how I want to share it. And it might still take me a little bit of time as I'm building my capacity back to sharing and learning how to share in these ways. And thank you for sticking with me through this episode, and with me kind of fumbling and it being imperfect. And I just want to remind you that it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be messy. Like, I'm messy sometimes. We're all messy sometimes. If we are pretending that we're not, it's like, that's not real. Okay. I try to be real with you. And I welcome your questions, your comments, whether you agree or disagree. I also feel like it's a really huge, important thing to learn how to be friends with and to be in connection with people that I don't agree with. How can we sit and disagree and still respect one another? I think this is an important skill that we need to build, especially during these times. I am offering sessions with women, soul sessions. I offer mediumship readings. I am going to be restarting my grief circles. I'm sort of formatting them. I also have mother-baby circles or birth circles once a month that are virtual, and would love to have you join or tell me a little bit more about yourself if you would like to share. And as we close, I would like to read this poem to you. You may have seen me share this calendar before. This is the Wee Moon calendar. This is 2025, 2026. It's coming out soon. And there's this poem here that is right at so the new moon with partial solar eclipse is tomorrow. And this poem is just on the next page. The Mountain at the End by Wildish Tiny is what it says down here at the bottom. When I crest that mountain, I will look down from up high upon all of creation conspired to lift me up to myself, lineages converging, hoisting me. Be free, spoke the wind, the crystalline murmur of divinity. When I crest that mountain and look down from the snowed apex of my own existence, my body held here by the courtesy of Earth's love for me, gravity. I will weep in the arms of my sisters and all who guided me home, lighthouses at sea. Climb up into the seat of your own drumbeat. Claim your place at the table. Speak your grace to those come in your wake, for you are their ancestors now. Feel that weight, then let it go. Point your feet downstream and let the current take you. Follow it to the ocean and be swallowed by her waves. You belong, though it never belonged to you. Your tender, holy flesh, the channel through which all is possible. And when your children have children and theirs after that, sit by their bedsides at night and whisper. I moved bolder so there would be a few less for you. I dropped my armor and toured the underworld so that you would have my light to guide yours home. My hand is yours to hold. And when it's your time to climb the mountain at the end, I will catch your breath as you join us in the place we always knew. Sending you all so much love. Let me know how you're doing, and I look forward to hearing from you. I would also love and be so grateful if you would rate, review, or share the podcast with someone that you know. If you share it on Instagram, be sure to tag me so that I can share that as well. Sending you so much love, my dearest, dearest soul sisters.